Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I congratulate my right honourable friend for bringing this debate today. I take issue with him only in relation to one point. I think he described Newmarket as the finest headquarters of racing in the country, and as the MP for Lambourne, I have to boast, I'm afraid, that we actually have really some of the best trainers in the whole of the country, and also Newbury Racecourse, which is probably the best known destination in my constituency. Collectively, the Lambourne industry employs over 1,000 people. It raises nearly 20 million a year for the local economy, but much more than that. It is part of our heritage and our story, and it's a sport to which many people in West Berkshire feel incredibly proud and connected. And if I could just make a couple of other points, because I think one of the biggest misconceptions about racing, or at least a lack of knowledge, arises from animal welfare. And one of the things I'm very proud of is how seriously we take that in my constituency. We have an exceptional veterinary facility, the Valley Equine Hospital, which is essentially a hospital that is dedicated to racehorses recovering from races. And also the work that is going on in retraining racehorses and preparing them for private ownership and a much more sedentary life. Retraining of racehorses, again, just outside Lambourne, run by David Catlow, and Heroes, run by Grace Muir. And I was going to make another point in relation to my right honourable friend's observation. Heroes, which does retraining of horses, uses a large number of young people, often of school age, maybe nearing the end, who have had difficulties at school and may have very troubled backgrounds or other significant obstacles in their lives, and have transformed these young people's lives, completely transformed them, because sometimes working with animals allows a channel of communication and development that no other channel in their life has afforded. I say all of this because I want to align myself with my honourable friend, the member for Shipley, and what he has said about the uncertain future that racing is facing because of the affordability checks that are proposed under the Gambling Act review. And I want to just say, as a starting point, I think the general ambition of tackling problematic gambling is a laudable one. It can ruin lives, it can suck people in, it's highly addictive, and it can lead to a terrible downward spiral where people can lose everything, their marriages, their jobs, their homes, and when it gets really bad, even in extremis, their lives. But my honourable friend, the member for Shipley, is quite correct to say it does affect a tiny number of people. I think it's 0.3% of the population. And this kind of pernicious gambling has distinct features. It is far more closely connected with the sort of casino-type game, typically online, things like roulette and poker. It has far less connection to something like horse racing, or you might enlarge that to say many other sporting events. But horse racing in particular is something where many people will go once or twice a year out with their friends, a big day out, where they will have a flutter and a few drinks and possibly push the envelope a bit on that. Greg Wood, the racing correspondent for The Guardian, put it this way in an article last month. The basic aim of affordability checks is a reasonable one, but the Gambling Commission's proposals make the same basic mistake that has plagued the regulation of gambling for the past 20 years. They fail to appreciate a significant difference in staking patterns, in margins, in cycles of profit and loss, and much, much more that distinguish betting on racing and other sports from fixed margin gaming products like roulette and the online slots. There is a deep concern within the racing industry that the measures proposed are disproportionate and they will have a significant impact on horse racing overall. It has been said, quite reasonably actually, that affordability levels are set too low. My honourable friend mentioned the £2,000 sort of red flag moment, but actually the very first affordability checks kicks in at a loss of £125 over a 30-day period. You could easily incur that at one race meeting alone. But by putting it at a fixed price, of course, this proposal fails to take into account income differentials or previous winnings outside a very narrow window, and it is unclear how, if at all, affordability checks can really be frictionless, as the Gambling Commission has suggested, when there is no real mechanism for this to exist. The head of the Lambourne Trainers Association wrote to me yesterday, and he said that bookies in Newbury have already started to bring in the checks that require proof of earnings, such as pay slips, even before any legislation has been brought in. The Gambling Commission has said that the most intrusive checks will apply to only around 3% of gamblers. But think about that. There are just under 32 million active gambling accounts held in the UK. 3% of that is still hundreds of thousands of people. And most significantly, A survey conducted by British Racing in October of this year suggested that half of all racegoers who responded to their survey said they would either bet much less or stop betting altogether if they were required to provide proof of income. And most significantly, 4 out of 10, 40%, said that they would explore black market options instead. All of this has the potential to be devastating. The white paper, as the Minister will know, estimates that its new protections would reduce horse racing betting gross gambling yields for somewhere between 6 and 11%, and that's even before you take into account the behaviour of punters who don't particularly fancy a day at the races where they have to prove their earnings. It will affect prize money when British Racing already pays out far less than its nearest competitors like Ireland and France, not to mention the Middle East. It will affect numbers who go to the racecourse if they can't have a flutter. It will affect the value of media rights, which are integral to racing. And the British Horse Racing Authority says it will seriously affect the levy and set horse racing on a path to financial decline. Just a final word, Mr Hosey, about the levy. At present, racing receives a return of just over 2.8% of the total 10 billion that is spent on sport overall. That is the lowest, anyway, of any major racing nation. The BHA estimates that the potential cost of affordability checks will result in an 11% reduction to the levy, and that is money that goes directly to things like animal welfare, veterinary science, education. So these are the things which are crucial to helping the industry develop and thrive. I will close by saying that if the government wishes to see British horse racing thrive, as I believe it does, it removes racing from the affordability threshold test, recognising the difference between betting in sport and online gambling, and secondarily that it increases the rate of the levy that is paid to British racing to support more competitive prize money and funding for equine welfare development and all the things I listed at the beginning to bring us in line with our international competitors. Thank you.